The multiverse is made up of millions of parallel but unique universes, all created as a result of minor changes in decisions and choices in the timeline. All the secrets and knowledge of these multiple universes are made known to me only, the Watcher. For what is seen as a blessing to some is also a curse, as I cannot interfere no matter what. Follow me as I travel through this vast multiverse, as we ponder the question, what if? On board the Dark Aster sat Ronan, after promptly dispatching a Xandarin, along with the two daughters of the Mad Titan, Thanos. In a few minutes, Koroth would return, bearing the news that would displease the accuser of Kree, greatly. The orb which held the key to Thanos annihilating the planet Xandar had been stolen by an outlaw called Star-Lord. In the timeline, which we all know, Gamora is sent to retrieve this orb from the outlaw, but things do not often go as planned. Ronan gritted his teeth at Koroth. He thought of how to remedy the current situation of him losing the orb. However, hope was not lost. We have information that he headed to the planet Xandar, capital of the Nova Empire, to meet with a buyer called the Broker. Koroth muttered, eyes downcast as he hoped to make up for his lapses. Nebula swiftly volunteered to go, and as Ronan accepted, Gamora made a counteroffer of her sister going instead of Nebula. She stated that she was more versed with the culture and landscape of the planet than Nebula. Ronan weighed the two sisters. Gamora was more skilled and experienced than Nebula, but he had recently heard a whisper of Gamora's suspicions, activities, and that silver of a doubt was more than enough for him. Nebula, you are selected for the mission. Do not fail me, said Ronan, as he turned away to attend to more pressing matters, but not before he caught the expression of surprise on both of the sisters' faces. As Nebula prepared her weapons in her assigned cabin, Gamora entered with a sense of urgency and conflict vividly etched on her face. Nebula looked at her with ice-cold hatred as Gamora attempted in cajoling her to swap places for the mission. As Nebula looked at Gamora and her flawless body, she got reminded of the countless times she sparred with Gamora in order to win the favor of her dad. Those countless times all resulted in defeat, and thus her cybernetic body. Anger had dampened Nebula's ears even more so than everything that Gamora said was left to the wind. The only thing that got her attention was Gamora's mention of the orb, which contained an Infinity Stone, and if in Ronan's hands, can be used to destroy planets and even Thanos. Even then, she had not shown any emotion. She just waited, and eventually Gamora signed in frustration and left. There was a time when she could have done anything for her father, but all she felt was hate and anger towards him and Gamora. A plan took place in her head to make them pay. On the planet Xandar, Rocket and Groot, two bounty hunters, had just discovered a target that would make them 40,000 units richer. Well, Rocket mostly did the discovering. Groot spent most of the scouting time messing around. They spent most of their afternoon tracking and stalking him, waiting for the right moment, which they would apprehend him. This was to avoid any scuffle with the authorities, given their present criminal records. Rocket himself begged for the glory of escaping 22 jails, but he was not keen on getting back into one. I am Groot, Groot muttered, as he pointed to the target. It seemed like their waiting time was going to soon pay off, as Peter Quill stepped into an office, which Rocket faintly recalled belonged to someone called the Broker. Before they could hatch out a plan, Quill stepped out as fast as he stepped in. Thrown out would be more accurate than the question by whom was quickly answered, as a purplish cybernetic creature jumped after him. Rocket slapped his head and signed, as he mused why earning money had to be so difficult. I am Groot was the only reply he received. Nebula's battle with Quill almost went according to plan. Her plan, she snickered as she kicked away his jet blasters, which which he attempted using to flee, and stunned him with her electricity batons. She could not imagine that this was the Star-Lord that gave Koroth so much trouble. She picked him up, and before she had a chance to demand the orb, a branch, Groot's hand, came out of nowhere and slammed into her abdomen, sending her spiraling into a building. Quill immediately sidestepped as the other of Groot's hand reached for him. He used the momentum and grabbed one of his quad blasters, aimed and fired, leaving Groot shaken. As he turned to evade his chasers, thousands of electro volts passed through him, which swiftly downed him. Rocket sprinted to claim his target along with Groot when they were immediately cut off by Gamora. Nebula's vision returned to her more quickly than her senses. She could see Gamora with a raccoon and a tree-like creature squaring off near the unconscious body of Star-Lord, but could not make sense of it. When her senses finally caught up with her, she screamed in raw anger at the realization that Gamora was sabotaging her mission. It was this anger that made her throw her energy dagger right at Gamora, who had made short work of both Rocket and now an armless Groot. The dagger did not miss as Nebula walked to the dying Gamora, and as she snatched the orb from her hand, she did not feel any remorse. There is only so much robotic part you can add to your body before your heart becomes as cold as iron. As Gamora laid there beside Star-Lord, her life ended. As she closed her eyes in the immortal sleep, Peter Quill emerged from his. He was afraid that he was going to be handed over to Yondu by Rocket and Groot in the next hour and killed. It is quite sad that in this universe, Peter Quill and Gamora never met, but that is not even compared to the tragedies that are yet to come. Follow me. Nebula arrived at the Dark Aster and presented the orb to Ronan. She was given a ghost of a smile, the highest appreciation one can only hope to get from the accuser of Kree. Ronan contacted Thanos to inform him of his possession of the orb, all thanks to Nebula. When Thanos discovered the absence of Gamora and asked about her, Nebula admitted to having killed Gamora. This infuriated Thanos, but before he lashed out, Nebula revealed to Ronan that the orb contained an Infinity Stone, the Power Stone. Nebula made Ronan see that Thanos was no longer needed for the destruction of Xandar's civilization. He, Ronan, could use the Power Stone for his own purpose and be greater than Thanos himself. I am the most powerful being in the universe. You cannot beat me, Thanos screamed at Ronan. Not anymore, Ronan replied, as he took the Power Stone from the orb, which made him cry out in agony as he tried to absorb all of its power. His Kree physique was the only thing that stopped the stone from consuming him at once. Ronan quickly used his weapon, the Universal Weapon, and embedded the Power Stone in it, as the energy was too great, even for him. Even as Thanos ended his transmission to the Dark Aster, Ronan's threats still haunted him. There was war coming, and for once, this was not one he was confident of winning. He casted such vile thoughts out of his head and gave orders to the other to prepare for battle from his space throne. Meanwhile, in the Dark Aster, Nebula pledged her alliance to Ronan, only if he would kill her father, Thanos, to which Ronan accepted. The Dark Astra swiftly changed course to the planet of Xandar. They killed my father and my people. They shall pay dearly, Ronan proclaimed, as the ship drew nearer to its destination as time passed. At Xandar's military headquarters, they spotted an intruding ship, and when the ship was identified to Xandar's dark astral fleets of military vessels were being sent to ward him off. Hundreds of ships operated by Sakarans were also being sent off by the Dark Aster. This resulted to a full-fledged war, as destroyed ships rained havoc on the city and hundreds of innocent lives gone. It is moments like this that really makes me question my oath of non-interference. So many innocent lives being lost, and all you can do is watch. Garth and Saul of the Nova Corps came up with an idea, disabling the engine motors of the ship so it can crash land and destroy or weaken their opposition. Under different circumstances, this idea would be optimal, but even though he did not know it yet, this would be the decision that will make the destruction of the planet Xandar inevitable. As he goes to discuss this idea with the Nova Prime, I realize that just a whisper and I could change everything. But alas, I am the Watcher and I cannot interfere. The Nova military fleet tried their very best to destroy the engines powering the Dark Aster and missed the odds stacked against them, and unfortunately their best was enough. Shouts of jubilation filled the headquarters and streets as an unevacuated civilians screamed in joy, but this quickly turned into that horror and confusion as Ronan walked from his damaged ship unscraped. As he looked around at the confusion and terrified faces of the people around him who thought him dead, an amused expression took place on his face, and this soon gave way to laughter. As he laughed, multiple Nova ships surrounded him, prepared to open fire when suddenly his laughter disappeared and was replaced with a grim mode. I am Ronan, the accuser of Kree, and I find all of you citizens of Xandar guilty, Ronan proclaimed as he slammed his cosmic rod, carrying the Power Stone on the ground. This unleashed massive destruction on the planet Xandar. Within seconds, the planet of Xandar existed no more in this universe. Thanos' mangled head laid unrecognizable on the floor of his ship, the sanctuary more than 100 feet from his body. When one looks closely, one would see the imprint of a hammer made on his skull. Not just any hammer, but the universal weapon of Ronan, bearing the Power Stone. The sanctuary still bears marks of the battle that happened here not long ago. Surprisingly, the battle of Ronan with Thanos was a very brief one. Ebony Maw floated, the double-edged sword to Thanos as they got prepared for war. The sword was made from Uru, one of the strongest metals in the universe. As the Dark Aster descended, Thanos stood up from his space throne, ready to battle Ronan once and for all. But Nebula emerged from the ship. She came with a proposition of peace or slavery as Thanos saw it. Nebula's head rolled into the Dark Aster in response. This was war. The Sakaran soldiers flooded the sanctuary, destroying everything in their part, and emerging in their path, and engaging Thanos' minions in combat. Thanos, impatient, created a path of blood and bones towards the Dark Aster. Still, much of a coward for someone with the Power Stone taunted Thanos. That seemed to do the trick as Ronan came bragging out like a bull on steroids, cosmic rod in hand, aiming a blow for Thanos' head. Thanos quickly sidestepped and delivered a blow of his own with his double-edged sword, but this was blocked by the universal weapon, and Thanos was thrown back by the force wave it generated, and Ronan unscratched. If Thanos was phased, he didn't show it. This time he charged first, and it was rewarded as he drew first blood. It was this act that gave him overconfidence, and he charged again, but this time Ronan was prepared. As Thanos brought his double-edged sword down on Ronan to behead him, Ronan twisted around with his universal weapon and brought it in a clash with Thanos' sword. The result included the hammer driving the blade of the double-edged sword through Thanos' neck, and the universal hammer bashing Thanos' head in and sending it far away from his body. Ronan stood there, all of his goals accomplished, but he still needed more. Like a wise man in one, the most ignorant universes said, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. I had feared that this would happen. This is his quest for blood, and it was insatiable. This universe will soon be at an end. There is no hope for them. Wait, I see something. A glimmer of hope. Well, it would take an Infinity Stone to beat an Infinity Stone. Let's watch and see what happens. After all, that's all we can do. Watch. Captain Marvel had felt something, a disturbance, and she had just checked it out. As she landed on the sanctuary, she spotted Ronan, the accuser, in the mist of dead bodies. Hands lifted up and eyes closed, as if he was literally feeding off the souls of the dead. "The last time we met, you ran away," she said, interrupting his trance. Ronan's gaze fell off Ver as he searched for the creature that so dared interrupted him. If it was years ago, he knew, he would not have stood a chance against her, but everything was different now. He pointed his cosmic rod at her, grinned, and charged. Captain Marvel slammed into the space throne of the late Thanos. As she struggled to regain her bearings, Ronan followed up with a swing of his universal weapon, which she dodged by a hair's length, but was not enough as she was thrown away by the force wave created by the impact. The fight had been going on for so long, the Denver knew that she was slowly but definitely getting to her limit. She had underestimated him, but not anymore as Ronan rushed at her again. A shadow of a plan formed in her head, and she threw herself to the path of the universal weapon. Ronan was only eager to obliterate her as he added more power to the hammer to end the Ver once and for all. He was getting bored of the fight. His aim was true and the hammer struck and blasted Captain Marvel away, but something was not quite right. She was not dead. The power in that blast could have destroyed a planet. How is this possible? He was confused. Then he saw it, the power stone in the hand of Ver, and within a twinkle of an eye, he was blasted into nothingness. It seems that even I, the Watcher, does not know it all. Just when I had written off a universe to be consumed by darkness, that fate of Glimmer Night was enough to save it. And that is going to be what if Ronan the Accuser had killed Thanos in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, and what if Captain Marvel had tried to fight Ronan with the Power Stone? How do you think it would have ended? If you guys did enjoy this video, do make sure to subscribe, like, share, so you guys are all up to date with the latest what if content. I will be taking a ton of requests in the comments down below because a lot of you had requested me to do what if Ronan had killed Thanos for so long, and I really wanted to see where we could take this. And do you guys want me to continue this universe without a Thanos and a Ronan and all of the Infinity Stones up for grabs? Who would take those stones? As always, do make sure to subscribe, like, share, and turn your notifications on so you and your friends are all up to date with the latest content. But anyways, as always guys, thanks for tuning in and have a fantastic day.